Hi, y'all, and welcome to tonight's live stream. Well, today in the Brian Walshe trial, we finally heard from the person prosecutors say may hold the key to Brian Walshe's motive, Ana Walshe's lover, William Fastow. His testimony was not salacious or graphic, but it was very emotional and it was very revealing. It gave us the clearest picture yet of what Ana Walshe may have been thinking about what she was struggling with at the time, about dealing with the fraud that Brian Walshe was pleading guilty to, all of those sorts of things. And who was she turning to in those final weeks? We got a glimpse into all of that as Fastow walked the jury through how he met Ana, how quickly their relationship developed, their plans for the future, the messages they exchanged on New Year's Eve right before she disappeared, including the very last text message that Ana ever sent to him. So tonight we're going to walk through what he said and why it matters and how this testimony fits in to the prosecution's unfolding theory about what may have happened inside the Walshe home, why Ana Walshe disappeared. Of course, prosecutors believe that she was murdered by her own husband, Brian Walshe. Let's break down exactly what we heard in court today. Yesterday, and I'm double checking to see if the resolution is okay and everything. Maybe you could put that message in again, Marlon. I don't see that message. So anyway, I want to remind everybody that this is Mod Appreciation Week here on the channel. So all super chats will go to our very wonderful mods, Marlon and Mama Pinks. Yesterday, a few super chats came in a little bit late. I didn't mention them on the live stream. So I want to be sure to give a shout out and a big thank you to Gringa One, Beth Geib, and Susan Caracas, all of whom their super chats came in a little late, but thank you. Much appreciated for our Mod Appreciation Week. So for those of you who are just joining in on this case, Ana Walshe vanished on New Year's Day, 2023, and she has never been found. Prosecutors say her husband, Brian Walshe, killed her, covered it up, lied to police about it, but now that he has been charged, he has pled guilty to disinterment of her body, which in Massachusetts law includes the abuse of a corpse, in other words, getting rid of the body, and misleading investigators. He's pled guilty to that, but he says may have done those things, but it was not murder. Instead, it was a sudden, unexplained death. And the entire trial now turns on whether or not the Commonwealth can prove the intent that he planned this, that he intended to kill his wife, Ana Walshe. And that the motive behind that is being very well laid out by the prosecution. That's what they're trying to show. And they are trying to use the digital trail. We heard all about the digital trail today. We'll cover that as well. So Ana Walshe clearly no one is going to deny, was having an affair at the time she disappeared. Now, today we heard from her lover, as I said, so let's dive into William Fastow's testimony. We're going to break it down piece by piece, talk about how and whether it supports the prosecution's claim or Brian Walshe's claim that this was an intentional murder. By the way, if you haven't yet, would you please hit the like button? YouTube needs that to know we're alive and awake, and it would really help if you would do that. If you are not subscribed, we would love to have you subscribe too. All right, so let's talk about the testimony today. Now, William Fastow talked about when he first met Ana. And the way it happened was she got her dream job in DC and she needed to buy a condo so she could live down there while she was working there. The plan was that the whole family would move down there, Brian, the kids, but that all got held up for a reason we'll talk about today. But meanwhile, Ana had toured the condo alone and seen homes with William all by herself because Brian was still in Massachusetts with their children. Within weeks of the time she moved to DC, William said they had started an intimate relationship. Here is William on the stand.
Became close friends, then confidants, and before long we started an intimate relationship.
And when did that happen?
Shortly after she moved in from Massachusetts to Washington, D.C.
What do you mean by fitness dates?
Oh, let's stop there.
Ana was very
I
active.
just want to show you that. Okay. So one of the contentions, of course, of Brian Walshe was that she died suddenly, and that this sudden unexplained death could happen to absolutely anyone. One of the things the prosecution, the Commonwealth, has been at great pains to prove during the course of the trial is that certainly there was no reason for Ana Walshe to suddenly die. She was young, relatively speaking. I think she was in her 40s. She wasn't in bad shape. In fact, just the opposite. And that's one of the things this witness and a couple of others today testified about. What William was just saying was that he and Ana would even go on fitness dates. She was very active.
Physically, being in shape was very important to her. I hosted a outdoor yoga event, and she had attended on multiple occasions.
When you say Ana was very active, what do you mean by that?
She was very focused on staying in shape, sort of recovering from her multiple pregnancies, getting her figure back. She was really, trying to dial everything in and be as active as possible.
Did she exercise?
She did.
So what William explained to the jury was that he and Ana saw each other 2 to 3 times a week. Now, remember that Brian and the kids were back in Massachusetts, so Ana was in D.C. on her own. They were communicating daily, he said. They would call each other or text message. They also did some private messenger through Instagram. He said he never stayed over at her townhouse, but she would stay over at his house. But he did acknowledge that just as Brian Walshe has claimed, the plan all along was to move Brian and the children into that townhouse in D.C. The 3 upstairs bedrooms were already furnished for the kids to move in, but the family had planned to live together and to stay together, and that will become one of the defense arguments.
Her children were living in Massachusetts.
What did Ana tell you about why her children were not with her?
She told me that her children were with their father, Brian Walshe, up in Massachusetts, and that they were there because his home confinement was predicated on him being the primary caregiver.
So let's talk a little bit about what that means, what he's talking about. Now, Brian was actually pleading guilty in federal court to art fraud. Complicated case, really interesting. We talked about whether we'll do maybe a whole section on that so you can know a little bit more about that. But the art fraud case was going along. The question was, what punishment would he receive? He'd pled guilty. So what was going to happen to him as a result? Well, while he was waiting for the judge to make that decision, he was out. And one of the reasons he was out, despite having pled guilty, was because of the fact that he was the primary caregiver for the children. So if they moved with their mother down to DC, he no longer had a reason that fit. He no longer was the primary caregiver, and he was not allowed to leave Massachusetts because his case was pending. So everything was hinging on waiting for the decision by that federal judge about what would happen in his case. And while she was there in DC, it got delayed yet again. And so once again, she didn't have an answer as to exactly what was happening and how soon he and the children could move down to live with her in DC in that townhouse. And that was very upsetting to Ana, Williams said.
What did Ana tell you about how she felt about her children not being with her in DC?
Initially, she felt that it was something necessary for her to get through, but as time came on, it became a significant issue for her. It deeply upset her, and in time, she was even despondent about it.
Jurors, I'm going to give you a mid-stream brief instruction. You're going to hear
This is the
from this
judge.
witness evidence of Ana Walshe's state of mind. And it is limited to the purpose of establishing her state of mind as may be relevant to the defendant's motives in this case. Evidence cannot be considered as proof of the criminal act that is charged in this case.
What do you mean despondent?
Ana felt deeply disappointed that she wasn't in a position to be the mother the children deserved.
Did she tell you she discussed the children not being with her, with Brian?
Yes.
What did she tell you?
It was a point of contention for them.
So what happened there and what you heard the judge break in about is all of this relates to what Anna was thinking and feeling about the fact that Brian and the kids couldn't move down there. And he's saying she was really upset about it. Now, did that upset translate into her relationship with Brian? Did it translate into whatever caused, according to the prosecution, caused him to kill his wife? That's exactly what the prosecution wants to argue here. But the judge is pointing out to the jury, and that kind of hard to hear, that what the evidence is about is Ana Walshe's state of mind. In and of itself, the fact that she was upset, that's not evidence that Brian murdered her, but it might be evidence that that's how she was thinking and maybe acting in accordance with that. And maybe that would have some impact on how Brian was acting. So that's why she gives that limiting instruction right there in the middle to remind the jury that this is, or to tell them for the first time, that this is not directly about guilt, but it might ultimately have to do with that if in a sort of more roundabout way. So one of the things that was really striking about William's testimony today was that he was not really keeping this relationship secret. He would take Ana to visit with friends of his. They would go out to dinner with his friends. But Ana, on the other hand, was very secretive about the relationship. She wasn't telling anyone, including close friends, and she wasn't posting anything about it. She never showed a picture of the two of them on social media, as was perhaps more fitting with the fact that she was still married. He, on the other hand, was separated from his wife, and they were going through a divorce. So they were in somewhat different situations at that time. And I thought that was a pretty important point.
Did you socialize together with any of Anna's friends?
We did not.
Did you socialize with any of your friends?
We did.
Did Ana ever discuss with you telling Brian Walshe about her relationship with you?
Yes. Ana felt it was really important that when Brian was to find out about the relationship, that she would hear it from her. She had expressed great concern, and I think she felt it would be a strike against her integrity if he found out a different way.
So think through what he's suggesting, because it really suggests that Brian did not know about the affair and that Ana was doing all she could to keep it from him. She wanted to disclose it in her own timing, if ever. And that is fitting with what Brian's defense is. Brian's defense is, I had no idea until after I was arrested that she had any affair going on. She didn't tell me. She hid it from me. I had no idea. So the prosecution is trying to prove that he did learn of that affair, and he learned of it at a very important moment, just hours before he killed her. That's what they're aiming for here. So although at this stage, for sure, Brian Walshe did not know about the relationship, it did still begin to progress rapidly between William and Ana.
When would you say that your relationship became more serious?
In the early to mid-summer, around July.
And how would you describe it?
Ana had traveled to Massachusetts for Brian's sentencing, and the expectation was that she was going to be able to bring the children and him back to Washington, D.C. following a favorable sentencing for his art fraud issues. And that sentencing was delayed.
At that point, were you seeing other people?
Prior to that, yes.
And at that point, did you stop seeing other people?
I did.
So he is becoming more committed in the relationship, but she's still not disclosing anything to Brian at that point. The two flew together to Dublin, Ireland, and they spent Thanksgiving together there, not with Anna's family, not with her children and Brian in Massachusetts. She spent it in Ireland with her lover, William. Now, after that, Anna flew on to see her family, her native family in Serbia, where she was from. And Brian thought that's where she was. He did not realize about the Ireland trip, at least according to what he says is true. And perhaps the most controversial part of all this, and the part that you will see the defense kind of lean into when we get to cross-examination, is Anna also made a decision to not be with her children and to not be with Brian on Christmas Eve and Christmas morning, even though she had very young children who would probably have been looking forward to Christmas. As it turned out, she was going to be there on Christmas Day. She ended up getting in very late because her early morning flight was canceled. And so then she ended up driving for Christmas, but she didn't get there until later in the day on Christmas, having missed Christmas Eve and Christmas most of the day with her children. So, and here you'll hear him talk about that event.
And what did you do for Christmas Eve?
We drove out to Annapolis to have dinner with friends of mine.
And where did you have dinner?
The Annapolis Yacht Club.
Where did you and Anna go after dinner in Annapolis?
We went back to my home in Washington.
And did you spend the night there together?
We did.
And what did you do on Christmas morning?
It had snowed the night before, so Anna's flight had been delayed or canceled. She left because I was taking custody of my children either later that day or the next day in anticipation of taking a winter vacation with them.
Do you know where Anna went on Christmas Day?
She eventually ended up driving back to Massachusetts.
Did you and Anna discuss how Brian Walshe reacted to Anna not being in Cohasset on Christmas Eve and getting there later on Christmas Day?
She told me that they had an argument about it, and there were some points of contention.
Did you and Anna
I
discuss?
can certainly imagine that there were. I will just say this. I can't even imagine missing that moment with my young children. I mean, Christmas, maybe it's our family, but it's a huge deal in my family. And I just can't even imagine missing that moment. So I too am somewhat surprised by this. And I can imagine Brian being upset about that. Now, there's a pretty big difference between upset and what the Commonwealth says happened here, which is way past upset. But what the defense is doing and what the story includes, what even the Commonwealth's description includes, is a woman who did miss Christmas. What will the jury think about that? Will that make a difference to them? Or will they hold the line and say, who cares? Because you don't deserve to be killed because you missed Christmas with your children. So those will be themes that we'll hear both sides carrying forward. And we did hear the defense get into this some on cross-examination too. So what bothered Ana the most with Brian, it seemed pretty clear from what William was saying, was that pending criminal case in Massachusetts, in federal court. And the fact that he and her children were chained to Massachusetts. And that was a big deal in their marriage.
Any stressors about that, or any stressors in her marriage to Brian?
The biggest stressor was his inability to resolve his criminal case, and the fact that because of that, she couldn't be with her children and bring them back to Washington, D.C., and the fact that it felt like it was holding up her life.
Clearly understandable, right? That would be really upsetting to not be able to be with your children. I can certainly understand that, but that wasn't the only stressor. He said there were also money stressors and arguments over how Brian was spending.
Ana was the primary breadwinner with her job in Washington, and one evening she was looking through her credit card statement and had found numerous charges that Brian had made, and they had had a conversation about it that was heated. It was about some sports memorabilia that he had purchased for some sort of sports memorabilia business.
So William and Ana had planned to also spend New Year's Eve together on the 4th. They were going to celebrate it on January 4th. But starting on the 1st, he stopped hearing from Ana Walshe. Now, we all know no one heard from her again after that. But at the time, he didn't know that. And the state introduced 43 pages of text messages from various times between Ana and William. And that was just a portion of the communications between them. Now, some of those were just kind of everyday little things, but they really gave a portrait of the very intimate relationship between them.
What is that a picture of?
That's a toothbrush that Ana had given me that she had left at my house, and I had packed it to bring with me to Idaho.
And what does that toothbrush say on it?
It says Cohasset Dental.
Which is where she lived in Massachusetts. That was where Brian and the boys were and where her home had been before she got this dream job in DC. But apparently some of the texts were more explicit. We did not hear those read aloud at the trial, but they are being made available to the jury. And some of those also apparently discuss that trip that William and Ana made to Ireland over Thanksgiving, and the one that caused her to miss Thanksgiving with Brian and the kids. So here is what he said about the messages that we didn't get directly.
Also discuss intimacy. Is that right?
Yes, I believe so.
And your trip to Dublin?
Yes.
Now, he also acknowledged that he had actually deleted some messages in various places because he was basically embarrassed about them. And that obviously was a thread that the defense picked up on. Why those messages? Although now I don't really know where that's going to take them now that Brian has acknowledged that he disposed of the body and he lied to police about it. I don't know that that really helps him. Now that Brian's story is she died suddenly, what does it really matter if he deleted text messages? But they continued. That was their general planned theme, and that's what they continued on. So there was one picture in particular that may be one text message that may be what changed everything. It was a picture that the prosecution believes may have actually caused Brian Walshe to murder Ana. And there was nothing about the picture that would make you think that. But here's what we heard about it. It was not actually shown because they wanted to blur out the faces of any minors in it.
She also sends you a photo on New Year's Eve as well.
She did. This is a picture of Ana, our mutual friend Jen Mutlow, and one of her children.
This photograph is not redacted the child, so I'm not going to publish it at this time. And what had you?
So they ended up not publishing it. They showed one of Ana with her child that she had sent to him, and then there was a second photograph. But they were sent just before midnight, I mean about an hour or so before midnight on New Year's Eve. And what the prosecution seems to be suggesting is that Brian Walshe may have found out that Ana was texting William on that night, on New Year's Eve, and that may have been the catalyst for him to murder her. That may be when he went completely nuts and murdered her. That's what the prosecution's suggesting. Now, as I said, William and Ana had made plans. They were going to get together on the 4th when she got back from DC. She was not going to be returning until then. She was staying with the kids until then. But instead, she did not make it back. They did not spend the 4th there because, of course, no one had heard from her again. He did acknowledge that at the time she left to go home for New Year's, that she had not made up her mind about what she was going to do about her marriage to Brian. It was not like she had decided, I'm done with him, I'm with you. That was not where things were.
You and Ana discussed about your future together?
We'd had a number of conversations about what a life together might look like, what merging two families would look like, how that might work. But I had always said to Ana that she needed to figure out how she wanted things to be with Brian and what she wanted to look like for her life before, we could make any sort of commitments or decisions.
So the final text message between them was right after midnight on New Year's Eve, East Coast time. Now, after that, he continued trying to communicate with Ana. He sent text messages, he sent photographs, and she wasn't responding. He tried calling, she didn't respond, and he tried using a different phone number. He thought maybe she blocked my mobile, although if she had blocked your mobile, I think you probably should stop trying to communicate. But at that point, he said, well, he tried a landline just to see, and she also didn't pick up on that. And this kept going all the way through the 4th when they were supposed to get together. And on the 4th, something wildly unexpected happened, which was that Brian Walshe called William.
What did you do?
I pushed the call to my voicemail.
Why'd you do that?
I was in an intimate relationship with his wife. I had not heard from her in several days, and frankly, I was concerned that maybe he had found out and was calling to confront me.
Did he leave you a voicemail?
No.
Did you call him back?
I did not, but he called me a few hours later again.
When was that?
A few hours after the initial call, so maybe mid-morning, noonish. I couldn't tell exactly.
And did you answer that second call?
No, I pushed that to voicemail as well.
But this time, Brian Walshe left a voicemail, and the jury actually heard it. It was played in court, and here you go. Here
Good
it is.
afternoon, William. It's Brian Walshe. Hope all is going well. I was just reaching out to basically everybody I could. Ana hasn't been in touch for a few days. I spoke to work today. She hasn't been in. They went to the house and she wasn't there, or it looks like she's been there recently. So just wondering if you've spoken to her in the near, recently, like Sunday or the last 2 days. If so, let me know, or if you know anyone that might have had contact with her, calling everyone. So sorry to bother you. Sure, everything's fine.
I think you had.
So this time, William was worried. So he called Brian back this time right away, immediately. And he also went over to Ana's townhouse to check and see if she was there. He did that, in fact, twice. She was not there. And her car was also gone. Now, the car being gone is a curiosity to me. I don't know if any of you know what happened to it, but it doesn't really seem to fit, because we know that Ana flew to Boston Logan Airport. And we also know that she took Uber twice that day, which I had thought was from her home in DC to the airport, and then from the airport in Boston to her home in Massachusetts. But so if she took Uber, where's the car? I don't think we really have an answer to that. I guess it will come out at some point. If you know, please stick that in the chat or the comments. Now, the Commonwealth is suggesting that Brian Walshe found out about the affair, or at a minimum, confronted Ana about the affair, even if he had already known about it, after their New Year's Eve guest left. And the marriage may have been deeply troubled before, but Brian may have exploded at that point. That's the prosecution theory. And the defense responded by suggesting that actually the marriage between Ana and Brian was really pretty good, despite her affair and despite his federal pending conviction. So on cross-examination, the defense asked William about the troubles in his own marriage, because remember, he was separated from his wife and going through a divorce at the time he was seeing Ana.
Mentioned that Mrs. Walshe, Ana Walshe, had described an argument that she had with Brian Walshe about some charges on a credit card.
Yes.
So they had an argument about finances or money.
Yes.
Okay. During your marriage, did you ever have an argument or disagreement with your wife about finances or money?
Yes.
I don't know that took them anywhere, but that was sort of how they approached it. The Commonwealth, though, zeroed in on a very particular argument related to the fact that Ana was missing New Year's Eve and Christmas morning with her, did I say the Commonwealth? The defense, and was missing Christmas morning with her own kids in order to be with her lover. And they talked about that I think they think that's an important point for them.
This argument was because she was delayed in coming home?
Yes.
Christmas Day?
Yes.
Okay. And so it's Christmas Day, they have 3 sons, and her flight gets canceled, and she's late coming up, right?
Yes.
And so from what you talked to her about, that was upsetting to Mr. Walsh.
Yes.
And I think the defense is saying, well, who wouldn't be upset about that? But that's a pretty far cry from what the prosecution, the Commonwealth, is saying happened here. So, and as I mentioned, Ana ended up driving to Massachusetts, getting there later on Christmas Day. So Brian's team wants to show the jury that he had no idea about this affair, that he was as surprised as anyone, learned about it after he'd been arrested. After she disappeared and he was arrested, only then did he find out about it. So the defense went into how careful Ana and William were not to disclose to Brian what they were doing. Like, they sent their messages privately and they never posted public pictures with each other, that sort of thing.
At no point did she ever come to you concerned and say, I think my husband knows I have an affair, or he's suspicious of you?
We had one episode where Brian called me while we were out to dinner, and I showed the phone to Ana because it was unusual for Brian to call me. Ana then later called Brian, and Brian had claimed that one of their children had taken his phone and called me by accident. That would be the closest thing that had happened where we felt concerned that maybe Brian had found out.
Did Ana ever text you or call you and say, oh, I think Brian is suspicious that I'm having an affair?
Ana never texted or called me and said that she felt that Brian knew that we were having an affair.
So there
I do think that's kind of odd that he happened to call while they were having dinner and then he says it was the child picking up the phone. I don't know what I think about that. It's pretty important because if he in fact knew that this was going on or suspected it, that would have meant that he was following it. The judge has suggested that the prosecution believes he may have been somehow monitoring her text messages. He may have known at least by New Year's Eve, if not before that, about her communication with William Fastow, because he said something about it in the middle of his interviews with the police. So that's what the prosecution is going to be talking about moving forward. So as I mentioned earlier, Ana was way more careful than William was about not letting anyone know about it. And that does make more sense. They did not go out together in their friend groups that overlapped with her friend groups, except for, he said there was a work party he went to for her, but they just went as colleagues, not as romantic partners. So most importantly of all, Ana seemed very reluctant to tell her husband, Brian, about the affair with William. And Brian's team jumped on this as evidence that Brian really did have no clue about what Ana was doing. He had no motive to harm her because he had no idea that she was having this affair.
There was no plan as Ana went home for Christmas to be with her family that she was going to come clean and tell Brian about you.
As I said, there was no plan that I was aware of.
She never told you, hey, Will, I'm gonna go home, I'm gonna talk to Brian, I'm gonna blow up my marriage and come be with you. She never told you that.
That is correct.
I think you had told us that Ana would never want, or maybe I'm paraphrasing, but Ana would never want her husband, Brian, to find out about the two of you inadvertently, right?
Correct.
That I think you mentioned integrity was the word that she used, that if anyone was gonna tell him, she wanted to be the person to do that.
Correct.
And at least in December, heading into Christmas, there was no plan to tell him.
Not that I was aware of.
Now, just as Brian's team has argued, the Walshes really were planning for Brian and the boys to move down as soon as they could get rid of that federal case that was just hanging over Brian's head. But it was a real possibility, and the prosecution was, in that case, was pushing for him to actually serve some prison time. So let's hear what he said about that.
And in the summer of 2022, the expectation and hope was that Mr. Walsh would not have to go to jail.
That was my understanding.
And the plan was for the entire family to relocate down to DC.
Yes.
and live in that townhouse.
Yes.
And the reason that's so important is because if she wasn't leaving Brian and he didn't know about this, well, what would suddenly cause him to lash out and murder her? If everything was going great, he was going to move down there, they had set it up. The defense even pointed out they had a total of 4 bedrooms, one set up for each boy, and then 1 bedroom for the 2 of them together. So given all that, why would he do this? And so the only thing is, and we do have evidence that because he's admitted that he disposed of the body and most likely dismembered it, and also that he lied to police. But where he's drawing the line is he's saying, but I didn't cause this. I got really spooked by it. I knew that I was facing this federal charge, and it would really make things look bad for me if she died in the home. So I just tried to get rid of the body so I would never be blamed for that. But it was a sudden death. So let me know in the comments what you think about the sudden death defense that we have heard. We don't yet have his expert testimony, but I want to get your thoughts on where it is so far. So put that in the comments or the chat. But the defense made a pretty good point, a pretty good record of pointing out that really William was not looking to push the relationship forward right then any more than Ana was. It wasn't like either one of them was looking to formalize things, get married to each other, anything like
Brian was
that.
going to find out she wanted it to be from her, right?
Yes.
And that it would really upset her if he found out any other way.
Yes.
To the point where it would devastate her if Brian ever found out that she was having an affair.
Yes.
And you had mentioned, I think on direct, that you had conversations about a future together,
Yes.
but you never had extensive, concrete conversations about being together and when that would happen.
Correct.
And at this time frame, that summer, fall, and winter of 2022, you were also in no position to openly start a new relationship with another person.
If you mean that I had not finalized my divorce, that is correct.
No, you were in a position that because your older son would have been devastated if you started bringing another woman around.
Yes, I did say that.
You say, he can't imagine me with someone else. Like all children of separated parents, he deeply wants us to reconcile. Introducing him to someone else would destroy that fantasy. It would crush him now, right?
Yes.
And that was right around Christmas time and New Year's that you texted Ana Walshe that.
Yes.
So you had no intentions of having any immediate plans to openly start dating Ana Walshe with your 2 young boys.
Correct.
So you can see where the prosecution, the Commonwealth is headed with this. They're trying to say there was not this big disclosure about to happen where Ana was going to sit Brian down and say, I want you to know I'm having an affair. I'm leaving you for William. We have plans to move on together. Something confrontational like that might have really upset Brian. That wasn't happening. They had made no plans at all to get together. Neither one of them actually wanted to move the relationship forward right at that moment in time. Maybe in the future, but not right now. And so oddly, too, he said that even when Ana talked about Brian, when she talked about the problems they were having, she was always very positive about Brian, despite that federal charge that was hanging over
At the same time you were having conversations just about her marriage and your relationship, you knew that it was always a possibility after having these conversations that Ana would stay with Brian, the father of her children.
Yes.
And while she would talk to you about arguments they had about finances or the stress of his federal case, she always spoke to you about him in a positive light.
Yes.
And you knew from her words, that she cared for him deeply.
Very much so.
all of that is really interesting because it leads to the question of why the prosecution says that there was something that happened, there was some reason that Brian would have done this, but without knowing about the affair, that's his contention, without any lead up to it, what's the catalyst? What's big that happens between New Year's Eve and New Year's Day that suddenly causes him to go from loving husband to murderer? That's what they are asking. That's what the prosecution is trying to answer. That's what the jury is going to have to answer. So the prosecution is saying that the text messages were something between Ana and William, were something that he referred to, that Brian referred to when he spoke to the police, and that he couldn't possibly have known that unless either she mentioned it to him. This is what the judge's explanation. Maybe she told him, hey, I'm texting our buddy, the realtor, William, sending him a photograph of what fun we're having. Unless she told him, and the judge said that seems kind of unlikely given that she was trying to hide the affair, that she was keeping it on the down low and she didn't want him to know. So why would she mention, hey, I'm texting the real estate agent in DC? What would be the reason for that? But alternatively, the judge said, and it was not to the jury, this was in the context of arguments and discussing things with the attorney. She said, but alternatively, the Commonwealth seemed to be suggesting that maybe Brian had access to her messages. Was he somehow monitoring them? Did he know what was going on? And is that the reason? Maybe he confronted Ana. So there's not, though, and you can see that there's no evidence around what happened. You can sort of see the effects of it. You can see that she disappeared. You can see the timing of it, but there's not anything direct about that. So Fastow was not the only important witness today. After he stepped down, the prosecution shifted back to timeline, to physical evidence. So I want to go very quickly over what happened the rest of the day, so you also hear more about what happened during the rest of the day. So as you know, we've talked about Brian's argument that this was a sudden death event. But the prosecution, the Commonwealth, I can't help but say prosecution, I'm so used to that. But in Massachusetts, the Commonwealth brought a witness, Ashley Cimino, who was a friend of Ana's from other bar classes and who taught bar, was teaching that at the time, the 31st of December, when Ana went home. I can't say Ana either. I have an Ana in my family. So, okay, so Ana went home, and she was home for New Year's Eve with Brian and with the boys, and she went to her class. She had regularly attended this class back when she lived there, and this friend had become a new instructor at this particular location. And so Ana showed up December the 31st, right before she disappeared, and the witness, Cimino, said Ana was not just well, she wasn't just not sick, she was extremely fit.
And how did Ana Walshe perform during that class?
She was a powerhouse. Clients are given the option during my setup that they can do push-ups on their hands and knees, hands and feet, or up at the bar for a modification. And she was doing the push-ups on the balls of her feet, on her hands. She was completing the motions. She was someone that you wanted to take class with because she made you work harder.
Now, why is that so important? It's because with this sudden death, the prosecution wants to at least rule out the idea that Ana was sickly, had some kind of unknown problem. She was very healthy. She was very fit. She worked out. And that's why they keep asking these witnesses that. Now, one of the most damning pieces of evidence all day was a very simple video of a car driving into an apartment complex. So they brought in, and then of a man just walking to the trash dumpster in the back of the apartment complex carrying a bag. That's all it was. But Sandra Waldrop, who is the manager of the Claremont apartment complex, testified about it showing a vehicle, which the Commonwealth believes is a Volvo, coming into the apartment complex on January 3rd. So 2 days after Ana went missing. And this is about 4:33 p.m. She said the time could be off by maybe 20 minutes. They didn't have a really precise clock on their video, but she does not recognize this vehicle as belonging to one of the residents. So let's watch this vehicle. There it is. And you see it kind of moves slowly.
Pause.
So, and then it leaves at 4:44. And you can see it there. So it's been back there a few minutes. I think it's not that one. It's the next one you're about to see. And you're going to see it leave. I will tell you too. I'll tell you something, because you know I went to law school in Boston. So I'm going to stop it right there. One of the weirdest things to me was how early it gets dark. See how at like 4:45, it's already dark. And that's how it is in Boston. I was working with legal aid, and I would have to take the train, the T they call it, over to work in the office where I worked there. And then I would come back to my dorm room. And when I left at, I think 4 o'clock or 4:30, it was completely dark. I mean, you were completely walking in the dark. That was so unexpected for me, but given its location and the time zone and everything, it gets dark extremely early in Boston. So anyway, just a little aside for no good reason. All right. And now you are going to see that this one, that's one, it's a showstopper. And all it is the camera at the back of the apartment complex pointed at the apartment complex dumpster. It's very simple, just a man throwing out a bag of trash. I think what makes this so horrible is thinking about what exactly was in the bag. So I've cut it down a little bit, but you can see him walk in. Well, first drive, and then you'll see him get out of the car, walk in. He stays in there a minute, and then will come out with the trash bag. And even though it's such a simple video, it's also very chilling at the same time, because Brian now admits that he hasn't been super clear, but something with the body of Ana Walshe. And there he is, but there should be another section where he walks to there. Hopefully I didn't only get the part where he walks away. That would defeat there we go. Okay. So here he is. See how he's kind of walking and carrying a bag that seems quite heavy. Unbelievable. And what does that play into? All the stuff he bought, like the hacksaw and those searches he did, hacksaw, best tool to dismember, crazy searches like that. And you can see from that, and that's why I think it's really chilling. The jury has heard about all these searches he did. They've seen the tools that got thrown away that were actually found. Now, this particular trash was picked up the very next day. So at that point, I think that's our last of the video. So you've now seen the end of it. Here the vehicle is driving away. And you saw the rest of that as you saw it come out of the apartment complex. So pretty simple and pretty chilling and disturbing all at the same time. Okay, so let's pull that out. And I'll go ahead and make myself big. We'll see whether I'm blurry or not. Yeah, y'all will probably let me know. Okay, so a contractor also testified. And let me finish with about the trash. Now that trash got picked up the next day and it was gone. The police were not able to find it. They didn't even find out Ana was missing until the 4th, when Brian and her employer both told them. There's some story around that and whether Brian more or less involuntarily told the police. But the bottom line was they didn't find out in time. It had already been picked up. It was too late. But they did find out about what was in another trash receptacle behind yet another apartment complex. We'll get to that in a minute because that also came in today. So a contractor was also brought in to testify that on January 6th, Brian Walshe texted him photographs of that hole in the ceiling in the master bedroom to see whether he could get it repaired. I'm going to come down on Team Brian Walshe on this side because I don't know that we have heard over and over again about this hole in the ceiling. When we first started the trial, his team said, we don't want that in because everybody acknowledges it's not relevant. And the prosecution said, Well, it's relevant to the fact that we did our due diligence and we tried really hard to investigate the case. So if he wants to point a finger at us and say, you failed to investigate and find exculpatory evidence, it's your fault. We can show, yeah, we did. We did everything. Okay, I can see that going up to a point, and the judge said, yeah, it can come in for that reason. But if in fact this hole in the ceiling is totally irrelevant, why are we having a contractor talk about Brian Walshe wanting to repair it? Why did we have the landlord talking about whether it would be Brian's responsibility to repair it or his responsibility since they were just renting? To me, that really shouldn't be in the case if it's not relevant. On the other hand, if there's some theory behind it that it connects up, well, I'd like to know about it. We just haven't heard it yet. So another witness we heard from today, Suzanne Garland, owns that bar studio that they were talking about that Ana Walshe had gone to. And she showed that she had the information about the classes that Ana attended. And that she had attended one on the 31st, right before she disappeared. One of the things Ana had to do was certify that she was healthy. In order to take the class every month, you had to write in and say, still healthy, still can come and do this. There's no reason I can't. And the defense pointed out, well, that's not exactly a medical certification from a doctor. That's just something someone writes in. Janet Cotter was another witness. She actually got her nails done right next to Ana Walshe on the 31st before Ana disappeared. And when she heard about what had happened, she recognized Ana and she called the Cohasset Police Department to tell them she had been in touch with her. She said Ana talked about what they were planning on New Year's. They were going to have a friend over. They were going to have dinner. They were looking forward to that. And Ana was also looking forward the very next day to having a special dinner just with her husband. It was going to be their New Year's Day celebration, and they were really looking forward to that. Or may I say, she was really looking forward to that. We don't really know what Brian was thinking about that. It's especially poignant because, she was murdered according to the Commonwealth, on that same day by the husband she was looking forward to having dinner with. And that's just highly disturbing. We heard from Julie Bassler, who was the director of the kinder care daycare where the Walshe children went. Brian normally brought the kids in and dropped them off. And this was a little bit different when the kids came back after the break on January 3rd. She said normally Brian would come into the office and come in through the office and they would all chit chat and he would say hello and so forth. But instead he went in a different route. He didn't interact with them. And she said, and I got as close to a quote as I can, it was definitely a little different than the usual conversations we had in the morning. The defense made a point, something about the parents had to bring a bag for each child, with diapers, with maybe a favorite toy, with some special things that they would need during the day, a change of clothes. And I'm guessing maybe Brian is going to testify that the reason he went in a different way was he realized he needed to run home and get the bag, that he had forgotten it, that it had nothing to do with Ana. It had to do with the fact that he was so distracted. I don't know why else they would have made a point of asking about that. And the defense also pointed out that Brian was friendly, engaging, interested in the kids and involved in their kids' lives. Now, before we go on, and I've got another witness or two to talk about, and then I also want to talk a little bit about sort of the meaning of today and what we learned. But I need to say thank you to all of the people putting in super chats today and this week. As I said, is Mods Week here on the channel, and all super chats go to Marlon and Mama Pinks, our mods. So I want to say thank you to a number of the people, and I'll save some. Lisa. I want to thank Pascaline. I want to thank Daisy Go. Very, very much appreciated. And I think everybody's up before. Teresa Heeman, thank you so much. What can I say? Has been a member for 21 months. That is awesome. And formerly known to all of us as Janet Studdard. She's gone incognito tonight. We're glad to have you with us, Janet. Good to hear from you. And Daisy Go has been a member for 11 months. That is awesome. So glad to have both of you on as members and for a long time. Tina is just shocked that Brian Walshe took this to trial. Well, he wasn't allowed to plead guilty on the murder charge itself, and the prosecution was not apparently in the dealing mode. They wanted to try the case. So here we all are. Phyllis has been a member for a month. That is awesome. And I'll do one more. Ken is also thanking the mods, and I am so glad to have you along. All right. So let's go ahead and talk about what we heard from the final witness of the day, Connor Keefe, a trooper for the Massachusetts State Police. Now, he's a homicide investigator, also does cell phone analysis. And he talked about Ana's phone still pinging in the area of the Walshe family home on the 2nd of January. So this is after Brian supposedly, she left, she took Uber to the airport. And that clearly wasn't the case. Her phone was still there, or either that or she had left her phone behind. He also talked about tracking one of the Walshe's devices, an iPhone 13 mini. And on January 1st, the day that Ana disappeared, and now I think the day that Brian will acknowledge that Ana died, that phone went to Lowe's and to CVS and to a grocery store. And then on January 2nd, it went to Home Goods and to Home Depot and to Walgreens and to a grocery store. And we have seen receipts and information about what was purchased at Lowe's and what was purchased at Home Goods and Home Depot, all of which the prosecution believes is completely relevant to whether or not Brian Walshe murdered his wife and to what he did with her body. We saw pictures of a Tyvek suit. We saw pictures of tarping. We saw pictures of a hacksaw and all kinds of shears and other items that could have been used. Cleaning supplies, tons of cleaning supplies. Then on January 3rd, and this was clearly the most chilling testimony of all, it went to 3 different apartment complexes. You saw the video of when it went to the Claremont in Abington, Massachusetts. But there were 3 different apartment complexes that this particular phone owned by the Walshe family went, and according to the Commonwealth, actually went to the area where the dumpsters were. What they think happened, what they are suggesting, is that he disposed of parts of Ana's body. And that's exactly what was happening on the 3rd. Now, police finally, as we know, got a break when on January 5th, they now know that Ana's missing, and that iPhone 13 mini was tracked to Brian's mother's apartment complex in Swampscott. There was a large trash compactor there. Police got there in time. They did not get there in time for the other apartment complexes that had already been picked up, but they got there in time to pull 10 bags of items out of the trash. We saw those yesterday in bags as they were pulled out to display to the, not pulled out, but they were opened up, and they will be made available to the jury. And we were told what was in them. We'd also seen photographs of them laid out on a white sheet as they were being pulled out of the bags and were being examined. So on December 25th, there was an iPhone 13 mini search made for William Fastow and Ana Walshe, found dead. So obviously, kind of, I think the implication behind that would be that Brian knew about this affair. Why else would he be searching William's name? At least maybe he had a suspicion. And also that Ana Walshe found dead, that's a little mysterious. Like, why would he be searching for that? But we have heard the story that when she didn't come, he apparently, according to Brian, he panicked. He told the police that he had no idea why she wasn't coming home. It was the 25th. The kids wanted Christmas, and where was Ana? As it turned out, her flight had been canceled. I don't know why he wouldn't have called the airport to find out what had happened to the plane. I don't know why instead he would Google Ana Walshe found dead, but that's what we were told. There was a search. So let's think through kind of where we are now with the testimony and what we've heard about today. So a natural question is, where does all this leave the case? Is this moving the needle for the jury? And is the Commonwealth proving its case? And I want to kind of take a step back and look at the bigger picture, because remember what the Commonwealth has got to prove for the murder charge that they want to stick is intent, that there was planning, that this wasn't a spur of the moment. This was intended. There was an actual plan. It doesn't have to have been long. It doesn't have to have been months in planning. There don't have to be charts, but it has to have been more than just a sudden action. And it can't just be manslaughter. It certainly can't be sudden death, which is what they're going for. So the fact that Ana had a lover who came to testify is obviously enormously important. It is of concern that William acknowledged that he had deleted some text messages, and a lot of what he said was helpful to Brian's team because he acknowledged that Ana did not want to let Brian know. As far as he knew, Brian didn't know, and there was no plan to let Brian know. This wasn't some confrontation weekend that was planned. There wasn't going to be something that would cause him to blow up that he knew about. If it happened, it came out some other way. So it's also interesting what the defense has really leaned into. They seem to want to throw some shade at Ana to see whether or not it will help Brian Walshe. She was having an affair. She didn't come home for Thanksgiving. She pretty much missed Christmas with her little kids. And they seem to be mentioning all that because I think they're trying to make a point about who she was. And I think they want the jury to be thinking about that as they consider what Brian Walshe is guilty of. Are they connected? No. Ana Walshe could be a terrible person and Brian Walshe could still be guilty of murder. Those are both entirely possible. But I think that's one of the mechanisms the defense is using because they're trying to make the jury think more negatively about the victim. So I think we can see that. I think it's going to be critically important for the prosecution to very clearly put together the timeline about Brian learning about this affair. If he learned about this text message, if the 10, I forget exactly what time, PM message was the very one he learned about, because he did reference that time frame as he talked to the police, they're going to have to really draw that out very particularly and let the jury understand why it is that they think this night was different. He learned something this night that set him off, that caused him to at least set into plan the motion, if not to just come up with the plan. That's what they're going to have to prove. This case has been moving very, very quickly. So I think it may end a little earlier than they had expected. They initially said 3 to 4 weeks. And so I think it might end up a little bit sooner than that because we're only at Thursday of the first week of the trial. There was jury selection, but she had said 3 to 4 weeks for trial. So it seems to me to be moving awfully quickly. All right. We are going to be, I'll take some questions. If you would put question marks at the beginning, that will help me spot your question in the chat. I'm trying to figure out where I was. That's the problem with stopping in the middle. I think I know I had done pastly. I'm trying to go through the super chats for the people who are giving for our mod appreciation week here on the channel, because all super chats go to our mods this week. I don't remember. I hope I'm pretty sure I covered Daisy Go, who had been a member for 11 months. Oh yeah, I did. And I think Phyllis Mills, I'm appreciative too, member for a month. That's awesome. Ken is thanking the mods, as is Puggin Spice. What can I say? Also thanking the mods. What can we say? We're very appreciative. Thank you. What can I say? Marlon would just like to send a shout out to everybody. Thank you. And they are really appreciating. I know Marlon and Mama Pinks both are. I've actually seen a photograph of the wild, unbelievable raincoat that Marlon's dog Jerry has received as from your largesse. So I'll have to show that to you. I'll have to pull that out and show that to you. I'll have to get it ready to go tomorrow. You will be amazed to see this raincoat. It is quite something. Jerry is going to be stepping out. Let me tell you, Jerry, as those of you who follow the channel know, is the most famous dog in the Netherlands, thanks to you. All right. So Quinley is a brand new member. We are so glad to have you. Very appreciative. Dial in for Mildred. is talking about where and when to dump the bags, and feels that might go to premeditation because he didn't just drive to random places. Dial in for Mildred, you could be right. They have not introduced any Google searches that would suggest he looked for that, though. And that is kind of odd. Like, why wouldn't he? Googled a lot of things, but all of the Google messages started on January 1. The only exception to that would be a little bit about divorce. According to the defense, 21 minutes worth of divorce. Other than that, and that happened earlier in December, but none of that related to the dismemberment or any of those sorts of disposal of a body, smell of a body. None of that happened until January 1st or later. But if they could find that, dial in for Mildred, that would be very huge. I do agree with you. Barbara, thank you so much for your super chat. Much appreciated by our mods. Family account suggests it made sense he was concerned and mad on Christmas Day when she didn't come home. I agree with that. I'm stunned. I don't think you could have paid me money to have stayed away. I could not wait for Christmas Day with the kids. I was probably more excited than they were. So I don't know. I can't understand. Thinking maybe she died, and it could have even given him the idea. Maybe. That's a good point. And that may be what they were going to lean into, the Commonwealth. Pascaline wants to know if Brian could plead guilty to manslaughter. I don't practice in Massachusetts, Pascaline. My understanding is he couldn't plead guilty to the full first-degree charge of murder. And the prosecution wasn't offering manslaughter at the time. I don't know if they'll charge the jury on that, but they weren't making that offer. So he couldn't plead guilty to it because it wasn't the charge that was facing him. He didn't have that as an option. Mama Pinks has been a member for 21 months. That's awesome. Mama Pinks, our other mod, and is thanking everybody, all of you, for all of your generous donations to the Super Chat Week for mods. Okay, so let me head back to, I will find, try to find the first question with some question marks at the beginning. I see Ken's, I'm just going to start here. I might not have gone far enough back. Ken asking if Ana had two phones. So there's been some suggestion about that, but they asked William if what her number was. It was the same number that she used normally, and he didn't know of any other phone or any other number. So that's about all we really have on that to give us any specifics. But it's possible. It's, we don't know for sure. Okay. Have you heard of long QT syndrome? Asked Denise. Typically genetic with sudden death in healthy individuals. I don't know anything about that, Denise. I wonder if that's what their expert witnesses will talk about. We have those still to come. And we know from what was said in opening statements by Brian's team that we are going to hear about sudden death and how it happens in completely healthy people. I will say, though, it's a very convenient defense. If you are a defendant and the body is missing, sudden death is it's a really safe defense, right? Because it's pretty much impossible to prove otherwise. But that's really interesting. Thank you, Denise. I appreciate your comment. I'm looking for question marks at the beginning. Oh, whoa, I went way too far back. I can tell. Probably. There we go. Mama Pink saying, okay. Freddie's cat wants to know, do you know whether Brian's mother will testify? I don't know. What I do know is she's sitting there in the courtroom. And in general, they seem to be invoking the rule that we keep witnesses out until they testify. So I think sometimes there will be, each side is allowed one exception. So maybe she's the one exception, but I'm thinking not. I'm thinking she's not going to testify. That would be different from if it came time to sentencing. Maybe she would make a statement, but that look, my guess, no, she's not going to testify at trial. Sunny Days wants to know, will the jury be able to find out that he pled guilty to dismembering her? I think that's vital for them to understand his guilt. So that is hotly contested right now. The Commonwealth does not want that to come in, and the defense wants it to come in. So Sunny Days, you have a pretty obvious take on it, which is admitting that is really disturbing. But he's apparently going to take the stand, at least I think he is, based on the way the opening statement went. And he is going to say, I did this and that. I panicked and I didn't know how to get rid of her. And I did these crazy searches, but I didn't murder her. That seems to be the way they're going to play the case out. As far as whether the jury will find out the judge was thinking about it, I don't think the jury is going to find out about it. She seemed to be leaning toward they would not know about it. And that's what the Commonwealth wanted, believe it or not. So Cindy asked when Brian will testify. We don't know. I would assume he'll come. Well, obviously he'll come during the defense case, and we haven't gotten to that yet. So when it starts, that'll be the deadline when it starts ticking. Jennifer is asking about whether I think they've proven reasonable doubt. And Jennifer, I try to wait until the end of a case before drawing any conclusions. I feel like that gives y'all the best chance to sort of think through it, to absorb the evidence for yourselves, to make up your own decision. So I typically don't say, this is from the way you feel when you hear all of the evidence about those Google searches, it's an easy case. The emotion of it is easy, but the law behind whether or not they've proven any kind of intent, that is actually a pretty hard issue. The fact that he got rid of the evidence, I think, is a pretty important point. And I think that that's where we'll see the prosecution going with its argument. All right, looking for more question marks. I think I have a super chat or two we need to go over and get to. Lisa saying, why is it in some cases deceased victim statements are hearsay, but not here? I will tell you this is just confessions of a lawyer, okay? I find the hearsay rules to be completely muddled and absurd. I think they're ridiculous. And I think we have all these crazy rules around them that let this in and not that in. And I think it's ridiculous. I think we should be ashamed of ourselves. But so it does vary from state to state to some degree. All the states have different rules around hearsay, but they do tend to follow a similar format. For the most part, they're pretty similar. So it depends on a lot of different factors and why it comes in. Sometimes it might be a dying declaration, or sometimes it might be it's cited utterance. And so there are different reasons for that, different reasons why different words come in. And you're probably referring to the text messages here. So, okay, let's see where I was. I was on Mama Pink's, thanking everybody. I don't know why that's not up there. Okay, Lisa, thank you so much for your super chat to our mods. That is very appreciated. And CF Fan, thank you also for your appreciation to our mods. So Jennifer wants to know, this is a really good question too. What are my thoughts on how precise the phone pings were compared to Karen Reed's, when it's like, oh, I think they're in this area somewhere? I don't know. I can't explain it. It could have something to do with the provider, or it could have something to do with the way the information was preserved by law enforcement. Very, very interesting question, which I unfortunately can't answer. All right. Better question, says Lisa. Why could the witness at a nail salon be allowed and it not be hearsay? So I didn't hear what their argument was on that, but she wasn't actually talking about, well, she was in a sense talking about specific statements. It was more, she was talking about the state of mind. Her state of mind was she was going, and that's where several of the rulings seem to go, was with state of mind. Remember when the judge gave that instruction to the jury. So I don't know exactly what the court's ruling was on that particular one. So unfortunately, I can't answer that, but she may have been using it for state of mind, which was that she was happy and excited to be with Brian. They were going to have dinner together, and she thought that was going to be great. Marilyn Wharton wants to know, was Anna's body ever found? It was not. It's not really clear whether it could be found at this stage. A lot of the evidence suggests maybe that would be impossible at this stage. So disturbing, very, very disturbing evidence. Where were the kids, says Carrie Pond. And apparently right there in the house. Right? I am as speechless as you would be about how that could possibly be. Maybe they went over to grandma's. They did have a nanny, but I don't think the nanny was there during these days. Maybe we'll find out more about that. If the nanny was told, don't come, that might be a pretty big point. Or if the nanny was upstairs while I don't even know. All right, I can't go there. All right, Pascaline read that sudden death is not a medical diagnosis. Can it be evidence? I think it could be if it's a medical fact, even if there's not a specific diagnosis that says this is what happened. If they can bring in a witness who says, yeah, this is a thing, it happens medically. We see that in medicine, or we see that when we're doing autopsies sometimes, and that's normal. It just happens. I think that's very possible. Let's see. Oh, thank you, Lisa. Again, Lisa Johansson coming in again. This is her third one. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Well, all right. This is one wild case. Thank you so much for spending part of your evening with me. This case is moving very quickly. We will unpack the next chapter tomorrow. So have a great night, and I will see you again